Well, actually, we're going to apply it a little bit because we talked a lot in the last class about, buyer agency, seller agency, dual agency, designated dual agency, sub-agent. You guys had the work on real estate agent brochure conversation, be able to go over that with people. Now we're hopefully getting to the point where we are engaging in this conversation with our folks that, hey, now that we've gone over work with a real estate agent brochure, we've told you what your options are, from an agency perspective. Now we are ready for you to hire us. In order to hire us, we need you to sign an agency agreement. Now, there are multiple types of agency agreements in the real estate practice. We're going to look at some of them. Ultimately, most of the time in your day-to-day practice, you will get down to probably 2 or 3. Most folks usually just 2. Most folks in residential real estate will use the exclusive right to sell listing agreement and the exclusive buyer agency agreement. Those are kind of your 2 staples that you guys will get really comfortable with. However, you need to know there are other flavors of these other agency agreements, and we're going to look at those as well. So remember the agency and firm types. Just kind of a quick recap of some of the stuff we talked about last class before we jump into the next section. We'll go, there we go, the next slide. So there is the exclusive sole proprietor. This is where I just got my license, I'm a full broker, I want to go be my own real estate shop. Now as provisionals, you can't do that because you have to have a broker in charge. In fact though, as a full broker, you have that option. So a couple of things to remember with this exclusive agent sole proprietorship. If you are the only agent there, you cannot designate. Why?
Nobody else to designate to.
It takes 2.
It takes 2 things.
Can't designate to the pet in the corner.
You can act as an exclusive or dual agent. You can be a dual agent, remember?
Just not done.
You just can't be designated. Remember, designated always has 2 agents.
So they don't
One
know
firm.
the other stuff. One doesn't know what the other one knows.
Right.
But you can't
So-
do as much as dual.
And dual, you're the referee. So you can either exclusively represent someone or you can be that dual referee. You would never be able to do that designated coach both parties type of agency. Also remember that if the broker dies in this capacity, it will terminate the agency agreement. Because we will learn shortly, the agency agreements are with the firm. If you are the agent and the firm, if you go away, so does the agency agreement. So there are going to be situations where you'll need to be aware of that. I know, hey, this was the only broker at the firm. I know that all agency agreements stay with the firm, but now the firm is defunct as well. With no firm, there's no agency agreement. So, yeah. Now, remember firm brokerage, we talked about kind of the vocabulary there and who, knowing that firm brokerage might be interchanged a little bit. Every other firm typically is going to be larger than 1 person. And when we have more than 1 person, all agency agreements are with the firm. So you as an agent of that firm are signing as a representative of the firm. We like to say it's my listing, it's my buyer, and to an extent it is, but you're signing these agreements that we're about to discuss on behalf of the firm you work for. And this is just a bunch of examples of franchises. Also remember that franchise and firm are not always the same, right? Each, McDonald's is a franchise. Each location is a separate business. And the same thing with real estate. Each Keller Williams, each Remax, they're all a franchise for branding, but each physical location is a different firm.
Now, when you say for branding purposes, you mean like the signs and stuff are similar?
Yeah, just so you,
Okay.
when you see a hamburger, you think Burger King or McDonald's. They're just trying to have brand awareness in your mind for real estate.
Okay.
And back to while you could have a buyer agent at one location of Keller Williams, you could have a different seller agent at another firm of Keller Williams, and that's not
Not
a
agency.
designated agency because they're 2 different locations.
Correct.
Yeah.
You can in fact have the same agents from the same franchise
Yeah.
and not be dual agents because it's firm, not franchise. Good question. So in the same scenarios that we talked about here is if the agent who signed on behalf of the agency or the firm should die or disappear, that agent would not terminate, the death of that agent would not terminate the agreement.
Because they're sub-agents.
Yeah, because essentially they're signing for the firm. After they're dead and gone, the firm is still there. So the firm would just appoint someone else to take over that transaction.
And that would be true if they left, unless they had a special agreement, right?
So yeah, absolutely. So, and that's one of the things that, and we talked a little bit about earlier, is that independent contractor agreement, right? So your independent contractor agreement will specify when you sign on with a firm, what happens with the agreements that you procured when you leave said firm. Because the agency agreement by definition would stay with the firm. Some firms will say, hey, we know that that client wants to work with you, so you can take it with you, or you cannot take it with you and it remains with the firm. Good luck in your future endeavors. So however that's handled will be done in your independent contractor agreement, but as it stands, the firm holds the agency agreement, and they have the liberty in their agreement with you to decide how to handle that if an agent leaves.
This is only this is only under a firm brokerage. This is not with the sole practitioner.
Correct. Yeah, because
How does the sole practitioner leave his own practice?
usually they die.
So everything with the sole practitioner just dies with this.
Yes. Yeah. So when you have a sole practitioner, the firm dies with them. Absolutely. Yeah. So, oh, also, all the agents of a firm are sub-agents, right? So we talked about that. If it's listed with the firm, everybody at the firm is a sub-agent of the seller. Now, agency relationships. Rentals, we're going to talk about more later in the section, but they are a little bit different because you know they are what kind of agency? Universal, special, or general?
General.
General agency agreements, right? So they are with the firm. They are largely with the firm because they will typically take several people to service a property management. So there's sometimes somebody there doing the books, somebody there doing the checking, somebody doing the maintenance. So it's not as cut and dry as a special agency agreement, like a buyer agency agreement or a listing agreement. So we'll discuss more of those, but typically they're going to follow the same protocol. They are with the firm. All agency agreements are with the firm. So I have a potential buyer or seller that may want to hire me. What am I going to do first? Why do I have this up here? You going to invite them to a tennis match?
You can find out who you're working for.
Yeah. So, Mr. Buyer,
Who you
Mr.
playing
Seller,
with?
do you like sports? Because used to be we had the listing agent as a seller agent, and you know they had their coach, and then later we got the buyer's agent, they got their coach, and that referee, and you get the gist, right? So you like sports? Let's talk about that because we have Working with Real Estate, a brochure conversation. When do we have it?
At the first meeting.
First substantial contact. So again, let's. There's a copy of this in your book on page 168, and you can print it off. I also have it on the website, so you have a copy of it as well. So I'm going to come back and review it. I don't want to go through it line item by line item right now, mostly because in the last class we did that. We
Yeah.
went through each section.
I never heard anybody say that so fast, either working with real estate agents for sure.
It comes after.
I
a lot of
tried it
times.
and I got working with real estate.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
Wolveria.
My mom cannot do W's and R's that way, so that happens to her too. She cannot get W's and R's in the same sentence back to back, or she doesn't love it. But Working Real Estate brochure is something you will do. First substantial contact. We went over pretty much every section in it in the last class. What I do want you to do is look at the actual document and get comfortable with it, because the conversation about it we had in the last class, you need to be able to sit in front of a consumer and go over that. And by the way, if you cannot explain the Working Real Estate agent brochure very well, and it's the first document you have to do with them, what do you think the odds are that you're actually going to get to the agency agreements that we're about to talk about?
No.
Slim to none.
So let's master that. Let's get really good at having the sports conversation, giving and go over, relating how we understand and how we can give them their options in the agency world. So, brokers must disclose this at first substantial contact. We have to provide it. By the way, why do you think I got these pictures here? Yeah, because first substantial contact. When does first substantial contact happen? And sometimes it's the first time we speak to them. What is first substantial?
Isn't it when they identify they have a specific need?
That's initial.
So,
Oh.
great, no, you're right. It's first substantial is the moment the conversation turns to real estate.
Okay.
So we can have conversation, right? We can talk Panthers, we can talk football, we can talk the weather, we can talk, right? We can have a lot of conversation, but when it starts turning to real estate and their motivations and what they're thinking about doing and their qualifications and why they're moving, those type of options, before you tell me too much, let me get you this brochure so that you understand how the brokerage world works and what your options are in working with a broker, hopefully me, as your representative under one of these capacities.
So is it when they first start start talking about real estate, like they just ask you how many square feet it is and blah, blah, blah?
Great question. So,
It's just when they ask.
when when it relates to them personally. So if you're holding an open house and they want to come in and look around and say, hey, you got some information, how many square feet is this house? Can you tell me about Winston? Can you answer some factual questions like that? 100%. Now when the same buyer says, yeah, we're actually getting relocated here due to the medical industry and we have to be here in 90 days, well, that's fantastic. Let me tell you a little bit about the Working Real Estate brochure and what your options are so that you're not sharing too much information with folks that might could use it against you. And so it's when that conversation turns to them. So we can tell them market statistics, we can tell them the price, we can tell them square footage, we can talk about the real estate, but when it becomes a part of their conversation and their motivations or something that may impact them specifically and their real estate needs, then we need to stop them and give them these options. So, and that is first substantial contact.
So legally, you're at a friend's barbecue.
I get this every class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, a friend of the friend said, oh, you're a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Interesting. Me and the missus looking to buy a house, yada, yada, yada. You're supposed
Yeah.
to stop what you're doing, sit down your beer, go out to the car,
It's
grab
easier.
this thing.
It's easier with a beer, absolutely.
Legally, yes. Realistically,
Yeah, it's like a party trick. So I bet y'all didn't know that if you tell an agent things you don't want her to know and you don't hire them, they can use that against you. Let me tell you how that works.
Do they have a digital version of the signature?
So yeah, you can do digital signatures on it. And actually the rule states that we will give it and go over it. There is no requirement for signature until they start giving us that confidential information. So once they start sharing that, we have to have had this signed prior to that. So a lot of times it's, hey, this is the brochure, and I tell this story every class, I don't know if I told you guys. People are fearful of signing things, right? We're just in that world. And I was at an open house somewhere, and a lady came in, and I was like, hey, great. She started telling me stuff. Like, that's fantastic. So do you know about your agency options in the real estate world here in Winston, what that looks like? She's like, what do you mean? So I got the brochure. I was like, so you can have a lot of different options when you're working with a broker. You can have a buyer's agent over here, being your coach. You can have a seller's agent over here being your coach. You could actually have the same firm, and it'd be one of these versions of dual agency. So you've got a lot of different options in what this looks like, but you should probably be aware what that is as you're out shopping in case you run into people and maybe give away too much information. So I just like people to be prepared. And so, if you don't mind, at the back of this, it has a little signature page. It says this is not a contract, but the Real Estate Commission likes me to give and go over this. Would you mind signing, saying that I did in fact go over this, as was obligated to share this with you? It's a disclosure. I just wanted to share with you so you know what you're up against. And she said no.
She said no.
She's like, I ain't signing. So, okay. I was like, well, you don't have to sign it. That's not a problem. And she said, I'll sign it saying I didn't sign it. And I
They need a signature
swear to
for
this
that.
day she did.
Sign it, saying it didn't.
I'll sign it saying I didn't
Would
sign
not
it.
sign on the blank. Was given, will not sign. Sign her name. I did
That's
my
good.
job. I did my job. I gave it. I went over it. She signed it. I should have kept that one actually, but I
And
think
framed it.
yeah, that was an old file. I don't know if I can find that one.
And it'll come up too, as soon as they know you're, like, literally this weekend, I didn't go over the disclosure because I'm not licensed yet, but my brother-in-law, they're getting ready to probably buy a house in about 3 months.
Nice.
I said, come see me when I'm licensed.
That's right.
But I mean, and I told him, I said, but in the meantime, if you start working with anybody sooner than that, be careful what you share with them, blah, 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 blah. So you gotta just kind of always be at the ready with that spiel.
Yeah, and that kind of relates to your question about the barbecue when it comes up. It's not always, let me whip it out, right? It's let me give it to you. Let me go over the options because we're just gonna, come on now. We're just gonna go over it. And I'll give it to you, right? So I'm giving it and go over it. And a lot of times it's just you're coming from contributions. You're being informative. It's like when you have an attorney at the party and you start asking them legal questions. It's like, so tell me what I should do here. And you want to be able to offer advice. And that's what you're doing. So you can give and go over it and provide that information. Ultimately, they're probably not going to divulge a whole lot of confidential information to you until they're really comfortable with you anyway. Or you may even in fact, at that time, started working towards an oral buyer agency agreement, which we'll get to. And in that case, it's a little more acceptable having gone over it, and then you can give it and move forward. So, yeah.
This just came up before I ever came to this class, but just curious, I know that y'all at Keller Williams have a department that pre-qualifies people. right?
We have a mortgage company, but any mortgage company can do it.
But it's within Keller Williams or
Um,
something, or,
the franchise launched at Keller Mortgage. It's more of a virtual type of mortgage lender, but you know we got Wells Fargo, Hamilton Mortgage.
so my question is, all that information though is confidential, it doesn't go to the agent, does it? Or does
Right?
it-
Yeah. No. The only thing that comes to us would be what we call a pre-qualification letter, which we'll talk about.
Like you are or not, right?
Yeah, it basically says you can, based on the information you've provided us, we think you can buy a house if everything you've given us is accurate.
Okay,
And that's really the nature of a pre-qualification letter.
Okay.
Mhm. And all that does is for us, give us a little bit of confidence that if I'm gonna put you in a car and drive you around or go in your listing appointments or whatever I'm doing, that it is with the at least somewhat verifiable intention that you can do what we're trying to accomplish.
well, also, it's nice to know that if you're dealing with a family member that's in real estate that, or a friend, that they don't get your confidential information, if you don't want them to.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, because again, just like us, all the information given to a lender is confidential and they could not share anything with us
Yeah.
if you don't give them permission, absolutely. So, and the reason I put this slide here is just to remind you that first substantial contact is not always at the open house, it's not always in person. We live in a world where people, that's the call button, I don't think anyone knows how to use that. However, they will email you, Facebook message you, text you more likely. So we see a lot of these conversations transpire. Just be diligent that no matter how the conversation comes to first substantial contact, it is still subject to the worker real estate brochure disclosure. All right, so we must review. You can't just give them a copy. Prospects sign the acknowledgement section. If they refuse, sometimes they sign saying they refuse. Honestly, what you should do is if you did provide it and someone refused to sign it, which is not uncommon, just get their name, write it on there, and note the day and time. Say I did give it to them on this day and this time. They just weren't ready to sign it. That way you can document if you ever get in a situation where somebody says, hey, did you go over it? Yeah, here, I gave it to them. They did not want to
Keep
sign
it
it.
for 3 years.
Does it have a spot where you put your initials on the?
Yeah, so actually the worker real estate brochure, actually, it has I got a copy of one, I'll get one at the break. So, let me see here just a second. This is more often the version that I work with, which is more of a paper print off PDF version. There's an actual a trifold brochure, that's how it got its name, the worker real estate brochure. But you have to buy those and I'm cheap. And I mean, they're not much, they're pennies, but this is always readily available and it's inclusive of all our forms. This is easier to print, and a lot of times it's digital, so we don't need the brochure. But back in the day, we carried the brochures, the actual brochures, and that would be, hey, let me give it to you, go over it. You would sign what we call the back flap, because the black flap is perforated, so you can tear it off. So then they keep all the informational material, and you keep the signed flap that has the signature page on it, so that you can say, this is my evidence that I got it, this is your material to keep and review. And now it's easier a lot of times in the digital world, it's in a PDF, you sign it, you get a copy, and I get a copy. Or you can do this paper PDF version as well. So either one works, but it does have the signature line. One thing that is notable on the back that we'll get to is that sometimes you're having this worker real estate brochure conversation, and it is evident, 100% evident, you are not going to get into an agency relationship with this particular client. They're like, we don't need an agent, I'm an attorney, I am an agent, whatever the case may be. Great. On the back page of that worker real estate brochure, there's a little box that says, you understand I am a sub-agent of the seller. I work for the seller, I clearly do not work for you, you do not need me, you don't want me. So that's where you would clearly, very clearly want to disclose to them, check this box, initial here, I am not your agent. I work for the seller. Anything you say, I will use against you. That happens a lot with for sale by owners who have no agent. So they are unrepresented, meaning you are a sub-agent of the buyer, or the buyer's agent. So that way you're always very clear with those types of folks. Don't tell me something. This is not a contract, but this is a big disclosure. I don't work for you. So first substantial contact can happen over the phone or email. If it's going to happen over the phone, just follow it up with an email or some message that says, hey, we talked about this. Here's the brochure that I was told you I would give you. And that is one of the biggest things. If I can give you a tip in real estate in the world we live in today, anytime you have a phone conversation with anybody, follow it up. Either keep a notepad, which is what we used to do. We would keep a notepad, and then after the conversation, I'd take down any notes about that call and date it and put this timestamp with it, so that if it ever came back up, I could say, hey, per my notes, this is what we talked about. It's not as good as an email that's a two-way communication, but at least that way I have some documentation that we did speak. Here's what we spoke about. Here's the date. Here's the time that we spoke about it. That's a good way to help, because it turns out sometimes people hear what they want to hear, not what you actually said.
I mean, the perfect example of that was when we were in kindergarten, you whispered into somebody's ear all the way
All
around.
the game
and
you
helped
Yeah,
them.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the,
I mean, everybody hears what they want to
whispering
hear too.
game, and yeah, you pass it around. It's a totally different statement by the time
Yeah.
it gets to
Yeah.
the start. Yeah, and that's classic. It's just he said, she said, she said, she
Yeah.
said. So you just have to document it very clearly, so you're always there. I've been guilty of it in the past, and I had done it, got away from it, it bit me, and I went right back to doing it because people think they heard or recall a conversation differently than you do. Yes, sir.
So, and it may be the very next slide, so if it is over the phone, do you, in practice, so you're legal, yeah, so you just send it to them and say, hey, let me get your email, I'm gonna send you something?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do that and say, hey, I'm gonna send it to you, or you
Or
can,
do you need to
how
DocuSign
would
it?
you prefer me to send it? Via,
Yeah.
I can email it to you, I can mail it to you, I can fax it to you. How would you prefer to receive a copy of this? And so just let them ask, and you can, and if they won't, if they don't wanna give you an email, give me a mailing address, I can get that. I can cyber stalk you and get your mailing address off a tax card. So usually most folks are at least okay with snail mail. So. And is it required for all transactions? Say no.
No.
What kind of transactions?
Real estate transactions.
Sales transactions. Worker real estate brochures, all sales transactions. Commercial or residential requires worker real estate brochure. Did I say property management agreements? Did I say lease transactions? They're not required in those deals. However, there is a version of this for lease transactions, and we give it anyway. I think it's just a good protocol. It's never faulty to overeducate about the process. Yes, sir.
Kind of a side question, but on top of getting your license to do this, do you actually have to have a North Carolina sales license?
Great question. So historically, and on my wall is a salesperson's license.
Yeah.
So I had a salesperson's license for real estate, which meant I had to work under a broker. We, as of a few years ago, several years ago now, went to a broker-only state. So everyone's a broker.
Okay.
So yeah, there is no longer a salesperson's license, there's not a property management's license, there's not a commercial license. It is all one license, and it's a broker license. Yeah, good question.
So, hey, sorry, you said you could use this potentially for property management, but there's really nothing in here that addresses that from a language standpoint. Is there a
Yeah.
version of this for property okay.
Yep, and then his question was that doesn't really work for leasing, and that one doesn't.
Okay.
There actually is a worker real estate brochure for lease transactions that has more tenant landlord specific.
That's on your website, right? The-
I didn't see that. I only saw this
I
one.
haven't printed it out, the one in the book is so small.
Yeah, the one that you print is easier on the website. The lease transaction one, I don't think I have it on the website anywhere. Mostly because you are not required to do it. So I'm not gonna test you on something you're just not required here. This, by the way, if I made this statement true, what can I do to make this statement true?
Add sales.
All sales transactions. If I add all sales transactions, this statement is true. Yes, they are. Questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
Do people ever still use, or agents, do they ever use still the brochure? Like because if you're like more old school and you just like that, that's okay.
Yeah, I have some in my office. I'll bring them
Yeah.
out at the break and I'll show you. Actually, I have several brochures that I'll share with you. at the
Yeah,
break.
I've just learned with like working with people too, sometimes like
Oh yeah.
older people or just, just old school people, they like because that's how I am, even
Yeah.
though I'm, but I still love all the old
Well, the number
school
one
ways.
question, and then like we talked about kind of before class starts, real estate's a people business, and one of the
Yeah.
things that we should ask people is, how do you prefer to be communicated with? We don't want to assume, hey, you like to be text when you don't,
Yeah.
and because you're rocking that old flip phone, we have to push it three times to get an R.
Corgi keyboard.
Yeah. Yeah, I had those pains. Y'all, some of y'all never know those pains, having to push the button 3 times to get to the letter you want to go to. Y'all don't know those pains. We got so good at that too, we were fast. Just like Morse code. So, all right, worker real estate agents we know about. What does it mean when I affiliate with a firm? This is probably one of the most common types of questions that I get all over the place.
You're working under a broker in charge of that thing?
Yes, so you're here to get your license, right?
Yes.
Y'all are like super focused on getting this real estate license. I'm gonna pass this class, I'm gonna get my 75, I'm gonna go on, sit for my exam, I'm gonna get a pass grade on national, pass grade on the state, and then you're like, yes, now what? Because you
You
have
sign
to,
up with somebody.
gotta go
You can't
see
just go do it
somebody.
on your own.
yeah, because you'll be provisional at that point, right? So you have to find a firm to affiliate with. And I get a lot of questions about, well, what about this firm? Or what about your firm? Or what about that firm? And those are all great questions. And one thing that I will kind of do is, in addition to answering those questions, but I will always defer you to do your own research. There's a lot of different models in real estate. And there's a reason that there's a lot of different models out there, because individual people have different goals in life and different models that work for them. No one is better than the other necessarily. It's just a matter of finding a fit that works for you. Some are going to be more of a top-down, where it's more highly supervised and you follow directive, and the others are going to be less supervised, where you kind of do you more than them, and everything in between. So, and limited service, and we're going to talk about those as well. So there's a lot of different types of brokerage models. So when you get ready to join a firm, do your research and find one that works for you. Read those independent contractor agreements. Please read the independent contractor agreement. Do not go and be like, oh, I like this one. Cha-ching. Sign. Read what you're signing, because you might be implementing or implicating. Yeah.
I have a question. So like with the independent contractor agreements, so let's say that one real estate agent has been, we'll just say Keller Williams, for example. Let's say one real estate agent has been there for years. Can the independent contractor agreements change? So one,
So whatever contract agreement you sign usually is in effect your duration.
okay,
If something substantially changes with the firm, they should do new ones. Now, what does happen is you have policies and procedures, and by signing on as an independent contractor agreement, you're agreeing to abide by the firm's policies and procedures, and policies and procedures do tend to change. So you might want to look at those too.
so can you be grandfathered in as an older agent?
It's up to each firm. Up to each firm what the agreement says. All right, so what's the difference between an employee and an independent contractor? Anybody want to know?
Salary.
How many of you have a job right now? How many of you are
W-2
here
versus
because
1099?
you have a job? Well, it is 1 o'clock on a Monday, so you'd have to have a first or night shift job. Anybody have a current full-time job that you guys go to right now? Good. So, well, then you are, I'm going to assume, I'll make an assumption, that you are currently unemployed. Which, good for you, is it's the same thing as being self-employed. They work the same way. So, self-employed, unemployed, same thing. And it will feel like you are going to be unemployed for your first little bit in real estate as you get going, because you will be working very hard with the hopes that you will start to generate some money. The biggest difference, however, though, in what you're getting yourself into and what you may have been used to in your past is that with a W-2 employee, when we got a $3,000 paycheck, did you take home $3,000? No, they take out
35% or 65%.
taxes and Social Security and all those great things. Hopefully, maybe some retirement. I don't know what that looks like. So if you had those things taken out of your check, then you gross $3,000. You probably only netted maybe $2,100 or $2,200, right? Because a lot of it came out. So because of your own W-2 employment, your employer, the person providing you that check, had the opportunity to give you instruction. I want you here 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. You're going to do this, this, and this. You're going to take a 30-minute lunch break. You get 2 weeks vacation. Here's the task you'll be charged with. Here's your supervisor. They told you what to do, right? In a 1099, you are what we call an independent contractor. Here is your job. Go do it, and do it well. I can't tell you when to do it. I can't really tell you how to do it. Your job is to go sell a house. Good luck.
Work it out.
Work it out. Stay within the confines of the law, follow our policy procedures, do not violate real estate commission laws or civil laws, and go sell a house. If that means for you, hey, I like holding open houses every Sunday 2 to 4, you can do that. If that means for you being in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, making calls, working on the computer, you can do that. I can't make you do that. You are the horse that I can lead to water that I cannot make you drink, which is also why we have an 80% attrition rate in new licensees. Because many new licensees want the license, and then they realize there's all this work that we can take you to do. But then they don't want to do it. And I can't make you do it because you're an independent contractor. If you do not want to do and be successful, I cannot force you. So in a W-2 employee says, hey, there's your goals. You didn't hit your goals. Do you want to get fired? Do you want to move on? We're going to cut your pay. You get a bonus if you do this. So you have production, you have expectations, you have incentives. They dictate your schedule. They have a lot of control over you. As an independent contractor, you have freedom at a cost, right? You guys can have the freedom to sit through classes Monday through whatever day, 1
You
to
have
5.
freedom for free.
Yeah, yeah, it isn't free, right? And the reason being is because if you are going to work in real estate, you have to work, you have to go out and generate, you have to do the tasks that earn you the commissions. And so you do have the flexibility to say, yes, I'm gonna be in class during this time, but that means you're gonna have to make it up and work some other time, which is usually nights and weekends, right? Because that's when people wanna see houses. I'm gonna go see a house tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go see a house on Sunday, 2 to 4, during football. I don't understand that. I don't understand. I'm like, why do we do open houses Sunday 2 to 4? That's a ridiculous thing.
Football.
We made that up. I'm like, y'all Panthers play football 1 to 4, 1 to 4 on every Sunday. You were not gonna see me at an open house. Who made this up? This is clearly not a football game.
Can
So,
you
Might
do
play
it
it,
at different
they don't
times?
absolutely. She said, can you do it at different times? Absolutely. I don't do 1 to 4. I'm gonna do Saturday if I do it. We're an evening. We do twilight open houses, so you can really play. That's a great part about being an independent contractor. You can work when you want to work and how you want to work within the confines of your employment. So there's a lot of flexibility in the independent contractor. And I say all this because one thing that is prevalent in our industry is what we call an employee misclassification. And as you renew your license forever, you will see this. So I hire you to be an independent contractor at my firm. Hi, welcome. Congratulations. I want you here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30. You get an hour for lunch, you get 2 weeks vacation. You're gonna do A, B, C, and D, or you're fired.
You can do it.
Thank
I can't do that, and now unless I want to put you on payroll, I can put you as a W-2 employee. Brokers love to do this, especially with administrative folks, because you're not making it in real estate. Why don't you come do some administrative work for me to help subsidize while you get your business going, right? But you have to be here Monday through Friday, 10 to 5. Doesn't work that way. If I'm going to tell you the hours, I'm going to dictate your workload, I need to put you as a W-2 employee. There's a huge, huge difference between independent contractor and W-2 employee, but also even bigger difference between whether they're working in property management or in sales. Because remember the general agency versus the special agency. Sales is a special agency agreement. One job. You've got one job. Sell me a house. Or help me buy a house. With a general agency, it's a broad agreement with lots of things in there to do. And so, and we'll talk a little bit about it more in the property management section, but when you are a W-2 employee of a property management company, you can and will do everything that a broker does except negotiate leases or lease terms, because that's what a license is required to do. So in the property management world, a W-2 employee, a lot different. You can show houses as a W-2 employee. You can meet tenants as a W-2 employee. You do a lot of things. When you cross that fence and go over to the sales side, that changes. Sales W-2 employees cannot show houses. They can't hold open houses. They can't do any of those things without having a license. So we'll get to that more in the what's required to have a license section in the property management section. But how you are classified as an employee has a lot to do with how you are treated and what you can be expected to perform.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, you first.
Oh, no, you go. No, you.
Okay, so when you get on a firm, when you get affiliated with a firm and you have that independent contractor agreement, I mean, clearly they're gonna provide you support to some degree, hopefully. But at some point, they're gonna say, look, it's just not working, see you later. Is there, I mean, I'm assuming your firm and all of them have some kind of an agreement that says you've gotta keep up some level of production or else we're not gonna,
I love this
they
question.
can't dictate it, but they're
Yeah.
gonna eventually want something from you.
So ultimately, it's each office independently owned, operated. They can put whatever procedures in place. One of the unique things that you guys are just going to find, I find absolutely entertaining. You guys are going to be like, what? As a 1099 contractor, I can actually have you work at my firm, and you don't cost me any money. You actually pay me to be there. Because you have monthly bills typically for things like E&O insurance and
Training.
copies and trainings, and there may be office fees. Each office, some are going to be different. Ours is.
So you're glad to have them there as long as they'll keep paying you.
So well, I won't say be glad, but it's one of those things where it's not as assuming they're not being risky and practicing
Right.
the outside. They're never coming in and be like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go sell $1 million property, and I don't know what I'm doing. Assuming they're not doing anything that would compromise their position as a broker or our firms. It's not an expense. So we don't usually set expectations from a firm's perspective. Now, I have my own kind of firm within a firm, right? So we do have some expectation there because I have paid for a lot of expenses, because I cover agent bills and we cover MLS and I have a lot of marketing. So if I'm spending money and you're not making money, we may not have an agreement. But if I'm not spending any money to keep you on board, and in fact you're spending money, my job is actually to coach with you and say, hey, you've paid $100 a month for 12 months. You're $1,200 in the hole. You didn't sell anything. This is a good idea. You want to keep this is an expensive hobby, really. I mean, it really is. If you're not going to do it, it's an expensive hobby. So we may have that conversation, and it's your prerogative. Yeah, I just like doing it. I just like coming to the socials. Cool. Got your month. Come on in. We'll have some fun.
It's like open houses.
Yeah, I just like going to look at houses. So as independent contractor, it's not really. I could have production standards and say if you're not hitting them, then we're just not a match. Maybe my space is important, and you're taking up my space. So there's a lot of different variables, but it does vary from
If
market
you're
to
in it for the
office.
right reason, I mean, if you can do it, you're gonna do it, you're gonna excel at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's places like if you go to New Zealand and you want to be a real estate agent, you get a salary. Welcome aboard. You're going to sell houses here, and if you're not producing, then you're fired. And in other words, if you're not making me more than I'm paying you, go back, which is by definition what all employees do. That's why they have employees to help, at least in a profitable business. So that's the goal, but it's different, and each one is different. So I can't say that our model is consistent with everybody's, but some of them will have, and some of them will not hire provisionals, by the way. Some firms will not hire you as a provisional because they don't have the capacity to supervise and train you. And that's their prerogative to do so. Frankly, provisionals are risky. They put my license as a broker in charge more at risk because I have to supervise you, and if you do something wrong and I wasn't supervising, not only am I on the hook for what you did wrong, but then I'm also on the hook because I wasn't doing a good job of training and supervising. So it is riskier. But I think a lot of folks are, especially with like I said, the laws are going to be changing, where the provisional status goes away a little bit quicker. So I think it's a shorter term risk, so people are more apt to do so. Did we get to you?
Oh no, do you have to be the seller's agent to hold an open house, or can any agent hold an open house? I guess with like new construction, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Any
And
agent.
actually, as a license, her question was you had to be the seller's agent to hold the house open. The answer is no. As long as the seller's okay with it, you're ultimately acting as a sub-agent of the seller one way or another. And most of the time it's within the same firm. You rarely see one firm holding another firm's house open. It would usually be within the same firm. And what I did is tell you, all agreements are with the firm. So by working at the firm, you automatically work for that seller.
Okay, so what if like someone came in and they liked the house and they started talking to you and they wanted, they wanted you as their agent. So you as a sub-agent, you guys would split the commission with the agent that was first, I guess. I mean,
So if I'm holding if I'm holding the house open and you're the listing agent, it's your listing and I've come to hold the house open,
Yep.
my intention is to pick up a buyer.
yeah.
And my hope is that they will, your hope is that they will buy the house I'm holding open.
Right.
The likelihood is they're going to come and I'm going to help them buy something else. However, if they do love this house and I get the opportunity to ask, hey, can I be your buyer's agent? Because I'm working at your firm, can I be their buyer's agent? I had to be their
Designated.
dual agent, one way or another. I had to be operating on a dual agency. So I would ask, are you okay with dual agency? If so, I can help you purchase this house. If they don't want any representation, I could be a sub-agent of the seller. We both work for the seller and the buyer is unrepresented. And so all the commission goes to the firm. How we split it up in-house, nobody cares.
Okay, yeah.
That's an inter-policy thing, yeah.
So I have a girlfriend that runs a apartment complex in Knoxville, and she doesn't have a real estate license, and I always wondered why she didn't have to have it. And she does everything from,
Everything.
literally everything. But the only thing she doesn't adjust is like monthly rent. And is that how she can do it because she's a W-2 employee? Not okay. Not
Yeah, actually,
1099.
and to answer your question, most of our on-site big apartment complexes and stuff, the on-site person is usually not licensed because they're a W-2 employee of the property owner. So they sit there and accept leases, sign leases, rent it out, do everything we would do.
Yeah.
Because the rents don't change. Hey, it's $1,000 a month rent, here's the terms. They're never negotiated. You don't
You're not
negotiate with
negotiating.
apartment.
You're just telling them.
You walk in and say, do you want a unit? Great, here's
Or
what it costs.
advising.
Yeah, now if they should need to negotiate, they have to escalate it to someone other than the on-site person usually.
Well, equal house opportunities. I think she does have to send it to somebody else. Like it was.
Like if it's a fair house or Section 8 or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, if there's a subsidized income or something like that, it might be. But yeah, a lot of your folks on
I
site,
always wondered why she didn't have to get a real estate.
which is really relevant conversation, because as we get into the property management section, you'll begin to see how many violations actually are existing in the real estate world right now, especially in property management, that people are like, I didn't know I could do that, because they do it and nobody knows to report them. So we'll help, and you can then go back and coach your friend. So when must a seller's agent disclose agency to a prospective buyer? Seller's agent, who's that? What's that apostrophe show?
Ownership.
Ownership. So this is the
Listing agent.
listing agent. Listing agent. When must they disclose agency to a prospective buyer?
When they list it.
Well, first substantial contact again.
So first substantial contact. Now, whoops, stop that. When must a buyer's agent disclose their representation to a seller or seller's agent? Now we have a buyer's agent running into a seller or seller's agent. So everybody's already represented in this case.
Yeah, first words out of your mouth.
Yeah, so this is that initial contact that we were referencing earlier. The first initial contact is everybody has a coach. The coaches are coming on the field to shake hands. This is where they're identifying, hey, I am their coach. Because sometimes, and this is real life scenario, guys, you are going to show a house. You are the buyer's agent and you're going to show them a house. Sometimes, now in typical practice, if I want to do this, I'm going to pick up the phone, call, schedule an appointment, I want to show this house.
Nobody else
from
will
1
be there.
1 to 2 this afternoon. I show up, the expectation is that the house will be empty and my buyer and I can look around. Sometimes the seller cannot or does not leave. So the seller may be present in the house when you show up. So your immediate words are, hi, my name's Steve Long. I'm with the buyer's agent with Keller Williams Realty and we're here to look at the house. So that seller knows exactly who I am and who I represent. So they don't say anything to me that they should not. Does not mean they won't. They will talk because they love to talk. But I have disclosed who I am and they should not tell me anything they don't want me to know.
Well, they shouldn't listen to what you're saying either, right?
Also true, yeah. By the way, and we'll talk about that more in the post-licensing. Her question was not listen to our conversations. So in the world we live in, how many of you got a camera on your house right now? Yeah, recording everything that's said and done. So the rule in this capacity is that largely stemmed from nanny cams when those first came out. But the recording, video recording, 100% legal without your authorization. So they can be recording you in their house, no problem. The rule is they cannot, and it is illegal to record audio without your authorization. But how many of those cameras you'll be like, no, I didn't listen to it, I just saw it. Or they don't record audio. Most of them do video and audio these days. So I always have the conversation with them is in the house, assume there is a camera somewhere. Don't say anything in that house that you wouldn't want the seller to hear. Because there's a high likelihood that they might. Or Alexa, right? Alexa could be dropped in and they could be listening to the whole thing.
Wow. Maybe you
Whatever.
could say things that
Alexa's
you want.
everywhere.
Alexa's everywhere.
She
Watch
is.
it. Alexa!
She is everywhere.
I thought I'd wake some up, but she didn't. No, iPhone users. I try Hey Siri, but she has voice recognition, so she won't answer me. She knows y'all's voices. Questions on the substantial versus first initial contact. This is first substantial. This is first initial. If you just want to circle that and highlight that so you know the difference. These are classic examples. First substantial, first initial. We talked about our designated agency, just a couple of quick rules. Remember, always with designated, we'll have 2 agents, same firm. No personal or confidential information from either party, known by either agent. That's the intention of the designation. And last but not least, and we haven't talked about this one, is now that you understand, hopefully, designated agency, the broker in charge cannot be one of the agents in a designated agency against a provisional broker. Why?
Because it's skill.
Because you have your advantage.
I'm supervising the provisional broker. If I'm supervising, meaning I have access to all their files, documents, and paperwork, do I not know what they're doing?
Should.
So I cannot act in a designated agency against a provisional broker.
You can go against a broker.
I can, yep. So a BIT can be designated against a regular full broker, just not a provisional. Again, the provisional is the training wheels, right? We cannot take the most experienced or the most liable person and put them against the training wheels. That's just not fair. So that will not happen. And that is something to circle and highlight as well. That is usually a tested rule either here or post-license. That one comes up a lot. What type of agency is best for your client? How do we know what's the best agency for our client?
You let them choose.
We let them choose. We let them choose. That's why we do the Work with Real Estate brochure. Here are your options. Remember, the number one rule as a broker is don't tell people what to do. Because you can't be wrong if you don't tell them what to do. You just inform them, let them make decisions. They tell you what to do. Remember, under special agency, we gather information and follow lawful directive. Be obedient. So let them decide. So, excuse me, let's try a couple of circumstances. An agent is acting as a sub-agent of the seller. He finds out information that could weaken both the buyer and the seller's bargaining position. What should they do?
Tell the seller.
So could they be, if they understand, a sub-agent of the seller, first and foremost, who do they work for? They work for the seller.
The seller's firm.
So if I work for the seller, and I find out information about both sides, but even including the buyer side, what would I do with that information?
Tell the seller.
I'm gonna tell the seller. That's
So
who
you
I
have
work
agency
for.
with.
Yeah, who's my boss? I have an agency agreement with the seller. Yeah.
No matter where the information came from?
No matter where the information came from, the moment I am privy to information that would help my seller, I'm obligated to share it. Which is why, again, in the designated agency, that's so important, because we have to make sure that the persons being designated don't have that. Because if they do, they have to share it. Whoever you work for, you have to share that, unless it's dual. Oops, go. Can two brokers practice dual agency when they're with different firms?
Nope.
Did it skip a question?
Tell the seller.
I felt like it skipped a question.
No, it didn't.
No.
Oh, okay.
Tell the seller?
All right. Can two brokers practice dual agency when they're in different firms? Say no.
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 Why?
So we're different.
Because
It
it's
has to
two
be the same
firms.
firm.
Two firms.
To be dual agency.
Dual
to begin with.
always has to be one firm. I know that seems silly, but they will slide that in there, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh wait, there's two firms. There can never be a dual agency with two firms. Oops. Can you explain the difference between each type of agency, universal, general, and special?
Yes.
All right. Do you know under listings, working with buyers, property management, working with tenants, the type of agency that would exist?
Yes.
So just again, general is usually the property management. Buyer, by the way, when you see buyer agency, I want you to put, actually, I have it up here. There you go. You can circle these. Buyers and tenants are treated the same. And this is where most people are kind of confused, because when you see tenant, you think property management, right? It is property management, but in some parts of the country, and some parts of even our state, tenant representation is the same as buyer representation. You're helping a buyer under special agency buy a house. You're helping a tenant under special agency find a house. Same concepts, both special agency, buyer agency agreement, tenant agency agreement, not to be confused with property management agreement. This is where you're working for the landlord. Property management agreement is the general agency. You need this to work on behalf of your seller so that you can do all of those things. And again, a general agency allows you to bind them to agreements and bind them to contracts and spend their money. So you need that authority as the property manager. As the tenant rep, you do not need that kind of authority.
You're still working for your client,
Still working for your client, still have an agency agreement, still they're your boss,
buying or
but
renting.
special and general. And I know on your brain I've programmed property management to be general, but watch that tenancy rep. Questions on that? Otherwise, we will come back and talk about Section 8 after your break. Not Section 8.
I was gonna say, really